what should Duke worry about in this? The financial thing isn't so great, by the way. You know, Kunshan is paying for the construction.
Right. I think Yale in the US is more expensive than Yale University of Singapore is more expensive than it was originally thought to be.
Right. So, what would you worry about? Jasmine.
This was mentioned in the Tsinghua case study, but the government's intervention in higher education. So Xi Jinping's movement towards more ideologically based education.
Okay, so that's a reputational risk that everybody, including us and our center in Shanghai, has in China. If you're putting on a program and you cannot put on a program that is up to your values, then why are you there? So this hasn't happened yet in any of these places. Jill, you.
I was just wondering why they didn't focus on a school like MIT or Caltech, which would make a lot more sense with R&D, entrepreneurship, higher education and liberal arts. There's definitely unquantitative qualities to that, and I don't know how much it would help Kunshan province. Because a lot of times you're thinking about leaders for the world. You're thinking about leaders for the world and thinking critically, which is helpful. But if they're trying to make economic means, wouldn't it make more sense to be doing directly technological?
So here's a really good question. How does this deal come about between Duke and Kunshan? How many people at Duke do you think know anything about Kunshan 5 years ago, 6 years ago?
Not many.
They know as much as you did a week ago. Basically, or less, since you guys are serious scholars of China. So how does a deal like this happen? Alex, give me a hand.
So the former dean of the Duke's
Fuqua School, business, very famous business school,
was going around to different cities, and then he met, I think it was the vice mayor of Kunshan.
Right.
And then they
very entrepreneurial woman.
Yeah, started working together and ended up spearheading this project together of creating Duke, the Duke Kunshan kind of partnership.
Okay. Anything else that we can gather? What do you imagine reconstructing this story, Eric? What do you think happened?
Two-way street, so it makes a lot of sense for Kunshan, but also makes a lot of sense for Duke as well. Duke's trying to be a truly global university that can compete with the likes of Harvard and Stanford, and to do that, this is something revolutionary that's basically hasn't been done since Peking.
The American universities were invested in China before the revolution.
Right. So now for them, they're the first university to go establish its presence. If it takes off, then they're really in China. Hopefully, the next economic leader of the world probably in 34 years. So they're really making an investment into the future.
Okay, so you think it makes sense for Kunshan. Obviously, the opportunity of getting a name like Duke just doesn't come every day. Derek?
It makes sense because they're so dependent on foreign investment, especially Taiwan. I think it's important that they hedge that in some way by developing their own kind of innovation so that they can invest themselves, because if something were to happen to Taiwan for some reason that they don't want to invest anymore, there's another low-cost producer elsewhere, then it might be...
Taiwan stuff starts going to Vietnam or Chongqing or somewhere. They're investing, they're making it easy for people to live in Taiwan. They have Taiwanese, you remember they have not just restaurants and tea houses, but schools and so on. They're building actually now a subway to go from one part of Kunshan directly to the Hongqiao airport in western part of Shanghai. And you can be home in Taipei door to door in 3 hours. It's pretty good. Sachin?
Maybe demand risk in terms of not necessarily students from China, but students from Duke in the U.S. Looking to go.
Going over there. So yes, will there be enough students to expand this, and enough of the high quality students? My guess is probably yes, but you never know until students show up. Harvard had how many students in its first class? I think 8 or 16,
Maybe 12.
So not a robust number, not one to give you confidence about the longevity of the institution. And so you have, so there is of course the kind of the risk that you get the students, and of course then they have to have careers and placement of a sort that distinguishes the institution. All of that is in the future, and we don't know. Sarah?
I feel like there's still a little bit of political risk just because of the ties with Taiwan. Looking forward, what if something happens between mainland?
Well, that's for sure a risk for Kunshan, generally speaking. I don't think it'll be a big risk for DKU. No, not really. It hasn't. It is. Its relationship to the Taiwan side of things is pretty tangential.
Okay.
Emma?
Maybe we were just talking about how they're sort of both betting on the other side being something, and Kunshan is betting on Duke being like the big university, and then Duke is betting on Kunshan being sort of the next Silicon Valley. And if it doesn't become this sort of center for innovation, then it's just a university in this town that like builds a lot of electronics.
So it's a very interesting that you've hit on a really important point, because the initial programs that Duke has there are in global health, are in master management studies, and so health and business, and you'll see other very applied programs, starting with graduate programs. But they're working very hard on, starting 2 or 3 years from now, an undergraduate liberal arts college, which is very much what Kunshan wants. And the question is whether a liberal arts college will so immediately deliver the kind of skills and intersections that you would want, or will it, end up creating people like you who are so highly critical and so difficult to deal with.
So who is the university for? Are they anticipating American students going out there?
So it'll be 50% Chinese and 50% international,
Okay, wow.
including Americans. And I was out there in the beginning of the fall to meet some of these students. Really starting very small, but with an extraordinary sense of commitment on the part of faculty and students.